So I say the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Okay. And how does that work when you were trying to create Shazam?
Well, when we started with Shazam, we had no idea what we were doing. So it was a new idea, and we were trying to launch a new company, but we actually ended up creating the category. And then we were very lucky because we basically dominated the category over a long period of time. But as a result, what we created was something which people still use today, all these years later, and people still thank me for. And I guess that we were very lucky because many, many times we were on the edge of bankruptcy. Many, many times we had to, fundamentally change our business, change the business model. But we got there in the end because we had a vision of the future that we wanted to create. And that's, I guess, my main message, which is to sort of pursue a future that you want to be part of, that you want to see happen, rather than predicting something, which means that you're putting it in someone else's hands. And unfortunately, with technology today, we have some really good aspects, and then we've got some aspects which are not so favorable. So I think it's our opportunity and responsibility to shape our futures if we can.
Good point. I mean, so it's like maybe people who are trying to do a startup, they think of what could make them the most amount of give them the most amount of success, but whereas you are saying it's best to see yourself in that future, maybe. What you would be using maybe in that future.
Yes, I mean, I'll give you an example. So let's say if you are, driving somewhere at night, you're driving, 100 kilometers. You can only see as far as your headlights will reach, but you can go the whole 100 kilometers just looking that far ahead. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have a goal or a destination. You need to know where you're trying to get to, but at the same time, you follow the road as you travel, adjusting and adapting as you go. And I think too often, if one sets off without a goal, then what are you aiming for?
Yeah.
Or if you have too rigid a plan, then you end up, giving up when you face a challenge, or you don't have the resilience to carry on. So that's is to have a mission, but then be willing to adapt along the way.
That's great, actually. So now you're using your success in tech for good. You're supporting a lot of startups. It's great. You're paying it forward, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you see the same issues that you faced in general with these new startups?
Yes, very much so. So every startup is exactly the same story. So it's all about passion, it's about drive, it's about desire, and then this challenge. So people say, no, it can't be done, it doesn't exist, and you get good at what I call magical thinking. So helping other people see your vision, buy into what you're trying to achieve. And then every entrepreneur goes through an emotional roller coaster of not knowing if you're going to get that next round of funding, not knowing if your customer is going to sign on the dotted line, etc. So as someone who's gone on the roller coaster for 18 years, I can sympathize with them, and I can provide a shoulder to cry on, or emotional support, and in many ways also just let them look a little bit further than they can. So they might be solving their problems today, and I can help them think slightly further out and be able to adjust as they go.
Any of your startups that you've supported, are any of them famous now?
No, they're not famous now, but I've invested in a company called Dandelion, which does geothermal energy in North America. And geothermal energy, which I didn't really know what it was when I invested in this company, now it's just become more and more kind of understood and recognized as a fantastic source of power. And Dandelion has done really well and is continuing to grow. And what makes me happy as an investor is that my money is at risk. My means are being put towards a business which may or may not work out. But if they do well, then it also makes the world a better place, because you're not depleting, for instance, fossil fuels. So I feel like it can become a win-win by supporting these kinds of companies. No, I really believe, because human beings change at a much slower pace than technology or innovation. We are fundamentally built to evolve over thousands or tens of thousands of years. So what's happening now is we're getting bombarded with all this information. We're having to make, many, many more decisions, and it's difficult for us to cope. And what happens is that certain technology makes it worse, which is the attention economy, for instance. You've got 5 things you're paying attention to. Here's something else which is knocking on your door. But if we look at our mental health, that's not what we need. What we need is peace and quiet. What we need is time to reflect. What we need is more quality time with like-minded people. And so the question I ask is, how do we use progress to actually help our human condition, which really hasn't changed in 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's much too short a period of time for human beings to evolve. And I think that question needs to be asked as well going forward.
You think, I don't know, is it all doom and gloom? Or is it, you think, I believe that jobs will be reduced. Not eliminated, but reduced.
I think we need to think about AI as a service to humanity and to human beings, and ask the question of how can AI be used for good, rather than how can AI be used and let the genie out of the bottle. And what I mean by that is, because with generative AI, for instance, we've got the opportunity to create so much more quickly, or make decisions faster. Then it puts more pressure on human beings to a certain extent, which is now I've got to absorb this content, or I've got to, make decisions much more quickly. And to the extent that's useful, fantastic. To the extent it's not, then the question to ask AI is, how do I reduce the load? How do I eliminate things which I shouldn't be paying attention to? How do I focus on what really matters? And if we don't ask the right question, we get the wrong answer. So if we keep saying, how can we do more, we'll get more, and that might not be what we're actually looking for. So my point in a nutshell is, let's ask the things which we are creating, the questions and the problems we want to solve, rather than take solutions just because they happen to be there from something we've created.
And legislation?
Legislation, absolutely.
You think it's important?
I think it's really important.
Necessary?
The reality is that technology exists within a landscape of what's right for society, what's not harmful for poorer people, for instance, what's legal and illegal. So traditionally, there's been an opposition to legislation. Traditionally, there's been an opposition to interference by the government. The reality is that we live in an interconnected system, where if we reject, regulation, or we resent, intervention or support from the government, we're actually missing the big picture. So I'm not an advocate for regulation in excess. I'm very much an advocate for the balance between technology evolution and the role of regulation.